Greetings, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and you are watching the Sense of Wonder YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. Let's take a walk in the library because I've got a book to show you. And today's book is about my mini adventure, a trip to Boston, and a visit to the MFA, or the Museum of Fine Arts, where they were having a very special exhibit of Vincent Van Gogh paintings, and I was really excited to see this, and I think you might enjoy some insights that I have for you. Of course, we'll look at some of the paintings, but you might enjoy some of the insights that I have for you in this video. Thanks. So let's first take a look at the layout of the museum exhibition at the MFA in Boston. I think you might find this rather interesting. You know, world-class museums are really very professional. They do things really very smart. You'd be surprised to understand how these places operate. I mean, you're talking having thousands of people getting really close to works of art that are just priceless, you know, worth millions and millions of dollars, and you know they handle it really well. I thought you'd find this interesting. Here's the Van Gogh exhibit, and we're going to take an overhead view of kind of how it was laid out. Not exactly like this, but it gives you a sense for, you know, what goes on in a place like this. Now, you have to buy tickets for this Van Gogh exhibit, you know, ahead of time, and you get a 30-minute window. And, you know, they have to do that because of the demand. They have to move people through. And with the layout, what they do is there's like a psychological thing where they, you know, psychologically you kind of, I don't know how to say it, kind of impelled to continue moving forward. You know, so they have several rooms like this, and you pass through like these big double doorways with no doors, but entryways, and you kind of flow through, and you go through the various rooms, and then you end up at the gift shop, and you're done. And I really didn't want to do that. And at every like intersection here, every kind of door frame, they'll have a security person posted, and they're very polite and very professional. But it's all the impetus is to, you know, hey, listen, enjoy the exhibition, but continue moving because there's other people that want to see the stuff, you know. But I really didn't comply with that. I got to the end and I thought, oh, no, that's it. Once I passed through these doors into the Van Gogh gift shop, which actually was quite wonderful, it's done. I may never see another Van Gogh in my life. So I went back twice. I walked all the way back to the beginning and then enjoyed another walk through, slowly making my way through and enjoying the artwork. And, you know, and the staff didn't say anything because it wasn't that crowded. I would imagine that if it was really, really crowded, you know, it was during business hours, so I would say the crowd was lesser, like after, like, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. I would imagine it gets pretty crazy when everybody's out of work and people are going to the museum and you know, and it's a Saturday, you know, so it'd be kind of crazy. They may have, there's more impetus to keep you moving, enjoy the show, but you have to move on to allow more people to see it. But I didn't do that. I was a sense of, I don't know what the sense of feeling came over me, standing in front of the doors to the gift shop, thinking, you know, saudade, maybe, the Portuguese word of saudade, where I was like, no, I don't want it to end. I wanted to continue seeing more. So I walked back twice and did it again, and the staff was really quite courteous about all of that. I think that's pretty interesting. You might like this. So let's take a look at some of the stuff, and I'm going to show you some video and some pictures they had roughly 15 or more Van Goghs, predominantly. The theme of it was the paintings of individuals, you know, the portraits, Van Gogh portraits, which were nice. And some of them, they even had photographs of the actual person. Like Van Gogh did a portrait of a little baby girl, and they had a photograph of that little baby girl, a photograph of her when she was like in her 70s. So now by this time, photographs had come around, which I found that pretty interesting. Let's take a look at some of the stuff, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. So let's start out at the beginning of the exhibit here, and I think you might find this really, really very interesting. This painting is, you know, one of his most famous paintings. It's of his bedroom, and I always found it interesting because for me, it seemed that he never really quite got the perspective right. Like he got the room crooked, and he's the painter. He paints it any way he wants. But it always stuck with me that the perspective just seemed to be a little bit off. And, the lines of the room are a little crooked. And come to find out, and this is where the museum did a really nice job, is they got the blueprints of the building, and they rebuilt kind of the room so you could see that he didn't get his perspective off. The room is crooked. And I found that quite wonderful, and I'm glad that the MFA did this. So I walked into the room that they made to see, the painting is right, the perspective is right, the room is slanted. It's not square. And I would have loved it if the MFA went the extra mile and actually had some furniture built to reproduce the actual painting in the room. But, that's beyond me. What would it have taken to, put up some blue walls and, the floor and, have a carpenter make the bed and the furniture and put in a window and maybe some faux paintings, or even hang whichever paintings they have. They had some of those paintings in this exhibit and put them up in their room. I think that would have been special, but it's, an interesting thing that they did there. And I really like that. And that was a great way to start out experiencing the exhibit. So let's take a look at some of the paintings. And this one was my favorite at this exhibit. It's a lesser known work, I guess you could say, but he's at the peak of his power here. This is Enclosed Field with Plowman. It's 1889, and that's the same year that he painted his famous Starry Night painting. So, and you can see Van Gogh in this. This is, his later work and the something about what he did and how he did it, and the earlier work is quite a bit different, so he evolved a lot, and I like that too. But, the later work is just something magical happened in his artwork where he just, I don't know. But, so here, let's just take a look at some of the paintings. And you can tell just by looking at them which ones are the early works and which ones are the later works, So that's about it. I really enjoyed my visit to the MFA in Boston for the Van Gogh Portraits exhibit. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Later work, right? The way the brush strokes and the way I don't know how to describe it. I'm no expert, but I just want to say thank you, Vincent.